First Contact, The Alien Cosplayer Experience, HFY Stories, Sci-Fi. The sun was setting over New York City, casting long shadows across the streets. The annual Comic-Con event was in full swing, with fans in colorful costumes parading down the hallways of the convention center. From superheroes to anime characters, it was a spectacle of creativity and fandom. But none of the attendees were prepared for what was about to happen. Among the thousands of cosplayers, there was one figure that stood out, dressed in a towering suit of metallic armor, its limbs elongated and angular. It had a presence that could only be described as otherworldly. A group of onlookers gasped as the towering figure moved with eerie precision, its movements almost too perfect to be human. At first, they assumed it was a particularly elaborate costume, but there was something unsettling about it. As the figure approached a crowd of curious onlookers, it raised its helmeted head. For a brief moment, there was silence, and then, the figure spoke. "Greetings, Earthlings, I come in peace." The crowd collectively froze. A dozen different thoughts raced through their minds at once. Was this some kind of elaborate prank? A promotional stunt for an upcoming movie? The cosplayer had to be a skilled performer, but this didn't seem like any costume they had ever seen. Then, a man in a Star Wars stormtrooper outfit raised his hand, clearly confused. Nice cosplay. But, why are you talking like that?" The alien cosplayer's voice rang out, smooth yet distant. "I am not a cosplayer. Human. I am Zyrtak of the Zilithan Empire, here for your planet's first official contact. My mission is to observe your species and determine whether you are worthy of intergalactic alliance." The crowd stared in stunned silence. Was this a joke? A prank? But Zyrtak's demeanor was too convincing. No one had ever seen such a detailed costume or such a peculiar performance. It wasn't like any cosplay they'd ever encountered. The alien cosplayer began to walk toward the main stage, undeterred by the disbelief around them. As they passed by a group of heavily armed sci-fi enthusiasts, a man in a Star Trek Captain Kirk uniform stood up. "Okay, this is getting weird," the man said. "You're really pulling out all the stops. But we're just here for some fun. Not, whatever this is." Zyrtak paused, scanning the man with an intense, mechanical gaze. "I assure you, I am no stop. I am an ambassador of my people, and I am making first contact with your species. Do not mistake me for a mere performer. You have been selected because your species has shown resilience, creativity, and potential for cooperation." Several people in the crowd muttered, trying to make sense of what they were witnessing. But others were beginning to think this might actually be the moment humanity had been waiting for. Was this really an alien, standing before them? It seemed so absurd. But the presence of Zyrtak, the way they held themselves, the strange yet oddly familiar technology incorporated into their costume, it was all too real to ignore. A woman in a sci-fi superhero costume spoke up, her voice shaking. But why here? Why Comic-Con?" Zyrtak's expression shifted slightly behind the helmet. "You Earthlings have a curious tradition of imitating the cultures you encounter through costumes, as you call them. This is where I would find your species at its most open, a gathering of your people celebrating what they have imagined and created. It seemed appropriate for first contact." The realization hit everyone at once. This alien wasn't just here to observe, they had come because they'd seen humanity's love for storytelling, for creativity, and for imagining what could be possible. And they had misunderstood it, thinking that humanity's cosplaying was somehow a reflection of their true interactions with the universe. Then, as the situation began to sink in, another cosplayer, dressed as a fantastical warrior from an obscure video game, stepped forward. "Wait a minute. You came here because we dress up as aliens? Like this whole thing is some giant costume party to you?" Zyrtak tilted their head in a mechanical motion. "Yes. Your species' capacity to create imaginative representations of life beyond your planet is remarkable. It suggests a high level of potential for communication, creativity, and..." Before the alien could finish, a particularly enthusiastic attendee in a full-scale mech suit, looking more like a walking tank than anything else, shouted, "First contact? Well, if you're gonna start the intergalactic meet and greet, we need a tour. I want to show you around Earth. Come with me. I've got a great spot for us to grab some pizza." And so, the group of fans surrounding Zyrtak, who was still entirely convinced they were conducting diplomatic relations, began leading the alien through the halls, pointing out booths, explaining various aspects of Earth's culture, and treating Zyrtec to their favorite convention snacks. The alien ambassador was blissfully unaware of the humor of the situation, happily engaging in what they interpreted as cultural exchange. Meanwhile, as the alien cosplayer took a seat with the other attendees, someone in the crowd whispered, "Well, it's not the first contact we expected, but it's a pretty good one." Humanity had long been the subject of countless science fiction stories, often portrayed as a young species with the potential for greatness, but no one had ever imagined that the first contact would happen in the middle of a convention, with an alien that thought Earth was just one big cosplay party. The rest of the event carried on as usual. People took selfies with Zyrtec, discussing theories of intergalactic diplomacy and debating the best sci-fi franchises. No one was quite sure whether this was a test of humanity's worthiness or simply a misunderstanding. But one thing was clear: Earth had just had its first contact, and it wasn't as grand or formal as anyone had ever expected. Instead, it was the best kind of interaction, a shared moment of joy, imagination, and humor. And maybe that was the true power of humanity all along. First Contact, the Alien Cosplayer Experience, Part 2. The next day, word had spread like wildfire. News outlets, social media, and forums exploded with stories of the alien at Comic-Con, and debates raged across the internet. Was it a hoax? Was it a viral marketing stunt? But more than that, people started to ask themselves an even bigger question: what if it was real? Back at the convention center, Zyrtec had become an unintentional celebrity. The alien ambassador, still clad in their intricate armor, was now surrounded by enthusiastic fans, each eager to showcase their costumes and explain the wonders of human creativity. In fact, the aliens' misunderstanding of Earth's culture only fueled their popularity. Zyrtec had begun participating in panels, trying to give an official presentation on intergalactic diplomacy, though it often devolved into debates with passionate fans on whether lightsabers or photon blasters were more efficient in combat. In the midst of all the chaos, there was one person who had taken a different approach. Jake Miller, an astrophysicist, had been attending Comic-Con with his daughter, Sarah. As an academic, Jake was skeptical of the whole situation, but the more he observed, the more he became convinced that something extraordinary had occurred. He approached Zyrtec cautiously, keeping his distance at first. "Excuse me," Jake began, adjusting his glasses as he stepped forward. "I'm Jake. I'm an astrophysicist, and I have to ask, how exactly did you get here?" Zyrtec's helmeted head turned, their mechanical eyes focusing on Jake. "I arrived through a tear in the fabric of spacetime. My people possess technology far beyond your own, allowing us to explore the cosmos at will. Earth's own scientists have discovered the existence of multiverses, though you may not yet comprehend the true implications of that knowledge." Jake blinked, his skepticism momentarily faltering. "Multiverses? You're saying you came from another universe?" Zyrtec paused for a moment, seemingly considering the question. "Correct. Your universe, like many others, is simply one of many that coexists. I was sent as part of a mission to understand your species' capacity for cooperation, as well as your creative potential." Jake's mind raced. If this was true, if Zyrtec was really from a parallel universe, a multiverse, then humanity was on the verge of something world-shattering. This wasn't just first contact with an alien species. This was a chance to interact with beings from alternate realities. His heart pounded with the possibilities. "All right," Jake said slowly, adjusting his approach. "So, you're not here to conquer us? You're just studying us?" Zyrtec tilted their head, their mechanical voice steady. "We are explorers. Our civilization has no interest in domination. Instead, we seek understanding and exchange. We have been observing your species for some time, but only now, after witnessing your creativity and resilience, do we feel you may be ready for intergalactic cooperation." The conversation was interrupted when Sarah, Jake's daughter, tugged on his sleeve. She was dressed as a small astronaut, complete with a hand-painted helmet, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Dad, look," she said excitedly, pointing at a holographic display on Zyrtec's wrist. The alien was using a device to create a 3D projection of Earth's solar system, showing planets, moons, and distant stars. The display shimmered in the air, bright and detailed. Zyrtak noticed the child's enthusiasm and lowered the display to her level. This is the solar system of your world. I can show you the orbits of the planets, their positions relative to one another. Sarah's eyes lit up. Can you show us other planets, too, like the ones you came from? Zyrtak's mechanical voice softened, almost tenderly, as they nodded. Yes, but you must understand, the distances between worlds are vast. The journey from my universe to yours was not an easy one. Jake smiled as he watched Sarah engage with the alien, her questions and wonder taking center stage. For a moment, he realized how deeply this moment was affecting him. It wasn't just the science, or the history that could be made. It was the way humanity had responded to the unknown, the willingness to embrace wonder, to open up and ask questions even when the situation defied all logic. As the hours passed, Zyrtak continued their tour of the convention, accepting gifts from fans, admiring intricate cosplay outfits, and offering fascinating glimpses into their universe. Despite the cosmic misunderstanding, there was an unmistakable connection forming between the alien and the people of Earth. There was a bond through shared creativity, an unspoken understanding that transcended even the most advanced technology. By the end of the day, as the convention was winding down, a group of cosplayers gathered around Zyrtak for a group photo. Everyone, from anime characters to superhero fans, from casual congoers to serious sci-fi enthusiasts, smiled and posed as if they were simply part of a larger, cosmic family. Zyrtak stood at the center, their metallic armor gleaming under the convention lights, unaware that they were becoming the face of an entirely new chapter in human history. But Jake, still contemplating everything he'd learned, couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. He turned to his daughter, who was still chatting excitedly with Zyrtak about the potential of space travel. Sarah, do you realize what this means? He said quietly. Humanity isn't just part of one world anymore. We've just taken our first step into a much, much bigger universe. Sarah grinned, eyes sparkling. Does that mean we can go to space? Like, for real? Jake chuckled. Maybe one day, kid, but for now, let's see where this leads. And as the sun set on the convention center, the world, united by imagination, was left with the hope that humanity's first true contact wasn't just a cosmic misunderstanding. It was a glimpse into a future where cooperation, creativity, and the limitless possibilities of the universe could finally meet. Zyrtak was just the first ambassador. Who knew who, or what, would be next? First Contact, The Alien Cosplayer Experience, Part 3. The week after Comic-Con passed in a blur, news outlets continued to report on the alien cosplayer phenomenon, with a few skeptical voices calling it a well-executed viral marketing stunt. But the majority of people were fascinated. There were interviews with witnesses, live streams of Zyrtak's interactions, and more photos than anyone could possibly count. People debated what the visit meant for humanity. The world had collectively entered a strange, surreal chapter of history, and no one seemed to know where it was going. Jake Miller, the astrophysicist, had been working tirelessly, digging through old data on potential contact with extraterrestrial life. His mind had shifted from skepticism to profound curiosity. Zyrtak's claims about the multiverse were tantalizing. If the alien was telling the truth, humanity wasn't just at the crossroads of discovering extraterrestrial life. They were standing at the edge of an entire multiversal frontier. Jake knew this had profound implications not just for science, but for philosophy, culture, and the very way people understood their place in the universe. And then, the call came. It was a secure line, and Jake recognized the voice on the other end. It was Dr. Emily Jo, a colleague and expert in astrobiology. She was breathing heavily, as if she had been running. Jake, you need to see this. We've just received a transmission from the Zilithan Empire. Zyrtak's people, they've reached out to us directly. Jake's heart skipped. This wasn't just an accidental message. It wasn't some misunderstanding anymore. The Zilithans were officially contacting humanity. I'm on my way, Jake said, grabbing his jacket and rushing out the door. The next day, Jake arrived at the International Space Agency's headquarters in Geneva, where the meeting had been arranged. Dr. Jo was there waiting for him, her face filled with urgency. Around them, various government officials and scientists from across the globe were gathered, discussing their next move. Jake could tell from the atmosphere that the stakes were higher than anyone realized. Dr. Miller, we're glad you could make it, said Dr. Joe, ushering him into a conference room. The walls were lined with monitors displaying data and communications channels. At the center, a massive screen flickered to life, showing Zyrtec standing in their full armored glory. This time, the alien wasn't at Comic-Con. This was an official transmission. Zyrtec's voice boomed through the room. Greetings, Earthlings. I am Zyrtec of the Zilithan Empire. As you know, I have observed your species with interest. We have studied your creative potential and concluded that humanity may be ready for something far greater than you currently comprehend. Jake's eyes narrowed. He had seen Zyrtec speak before, but something about this moment felt different, more formal, more serious. This wasn't just an ambassador from a distant world. This was a delegation from a far-reaching empire that spanned multiple universes. Zyrtec continued, in my brief time on your world, I have seen that your species is capable of profound empathy, creativity, and resilience. You are not merely citizens of a single planet, but potential members of a greater interdimensional federation. But before this is possible, your world must demonstrate its unity, for only then can you join the ranks of the many civilizations that exist across the multiverse. Jake's mind was racing. An interdimensional federation? How many realities could this alien empire encompass? And how would Earth prove its readiness for such an immense leap? Dr. Joe stood up. Zyrtec, are you saying that the Zilithan Empire is extending an invitation to join a multiversal community? Zyrtec nodded, their mechanical voice carrying the weight of millennia of experience. Correct. Your planet's creative achievements have exceeded all expectations. However, there is one final trial. We will observe how humanity responds to the test of unity. This test will occur across your planet, and you will be the first species in your reality to face it. If you pass, you will be granted access to knowledge and resources beyond your wildest imaginings. Fail, and you will be left behind, isolated in your dimension. The room fell silent. A trial? Humanity had been given an opportunity, a chance to join an interdimensional community, and yet it all rested on the outcome of some unknown test. Jake spoke up, his voice steady but filled with awe. What is this test? How do we prepare? Zyrtec's helmet shifted slightly, as if considering Jake's question. The test is simple in nature, yet difficult in practice. It will not be one of military strength or technological advancement. Instead, we will measure your species' ability to work together, to create a truly united front. Your world is divided in many ways, by politics, culture, and ideology. The trial will ask you to set those divisions aside and cooperate as one. A sense of foreboding swept over the room. The alien wasn't just asking for cooperation. They were asking for a global shift, a reformation of how humanity functioned as a species. How could that possibly be achieved in such a short amount of time? The trial will begin in 7 days, Zyrtec added. At that time, humanity must present a united solution to a crisis we will propose. The nature of the crisis will be revealed when the time comes. And with that, the transmission ended, leaving the room in stunned silence. In the days that followed, the world's leaders scrambled. There were urgent meetings, back-channel communications, and a frantic attempt to understand the implications of the alien's message. The test was not just a challenge of diplomacy or survival. It was a challenge of the very essence of human unity. Jake, still processing everything, found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about humanity's future. The alien ambassadors, with their advanced technology and vast knowledge, were offering humanity a place among the stars. But in exchange, they required something far greater, a willingness to transcend the divisions that had plagued Earth for centuries. The next 7 days would determine humanity's future. But as Jake sat with his daughter, Sarah, watching the evening news, he couldn't help but feel a small spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, the test would be the catalyst humanity needed to truly come together. Do you think we can do it, Dad? Sarah asked, her small hands gripping the edge of the table. Jake smiled at her, his mind filled with both uncertainty and possibility. I don't know, kid, but I think humanity has a lot more heart than anyone gives us credit for. And as the days ticked down, the world began to prepare for the trial, the test that would decide if Earth would join the vast multiverse or remain isolated in its own corner of existence. The first steps into the stars were about to begin, not in the form of rockets or spaceships, but in the collective will of humankind to unite. Would they succeed? Only time would tell. First Contact, the Alien Cosplayer Experience, Part 4. The countdown had begun. 7 days to prove humanity's worth. 7 days to unite a fractured world under a common cause. The challenge set by Zyrtec and the Zilithan Empire was unlike anything anyone had ever faced before. It wasn't just about technology or diplomacy. It was about the very core of human nature, cooperation. The world's leaders gathered in an emergency summit, with representatives from every nation, every ideology, and every culture. The stakes had never been higher. The pressure was palpable. In the wake of the alien message, every government, every organization, and every community on Earth was forced to confront the reality of their divisions. Jake Miller, still caught in the whirlwind of everything that had happened, found himself once again at the center of the conversation. As an astrophysicist, he was one of the few scientists who had worked closely with the initial communication from Zyrtec. Now, his role had shifted. He wasn't just a researcher, he was a key advisor on how humanity might approach the coming trial. Despite his position, Jake couldn't help but feel a heavy weight on his shoulders. He sat at a table with representatives from all over the world, each one reflecting the cultural and political divide that had persisted for centuries. The room buzzed with debate, suspicion, and outright hostility. The question that lingered in the air was simple: how could humanity possibly unite when it could barely agree on anything at all? How can we expect to solve this in just 7 days? One representative from an Eastern European country demanded, his voice sharp. We've been trying to solve our differences for centuries. Are we really supposed to set all that aside for some alien test? Another delegate, this one from a major Asian power, stood up, her voice calm but firm. We cannot let our divisions define us now. If this test is real, and I believe it is, we must act as a united species. This is our moment. If we fail, we might never get another chance. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room, but the tension was still thick. In the back of the room, Sarah, Jake's daughter, sat quietly with a few other children who had been invited to the summit for their perspective. Their innocence and hopefulness stood in stark contrast to the adults, who were consumed by skepticism and fear. Jake, sensing that the conversation was going nowhere, stood up. Listen, he began, his voice steady but urgent. We don't have time to argue. Zyrtec didn't ask us to become perfect. They're asking us to put aside our differences, even if just for a moment, and come together for the greater good. This isn't about individual nations or ideologies. This is about humanity's survival as a species, about our place in the universe. The room fell silent as Jake's words hung in the air. Slowly, eyes turned toward him. He wasn't a politician. He wasn't a leader of any kind. But in that moment, Jake realized that the test was never going to be about whether humanity had the technology to survive. It was about whether humanity had the will to change, to evolve. Back at home, as Jake paced the living room, Sarah came up to him, her face full of concern. Dad, do you think we can do it? Jake knelt down to her level, resting his hand on her shoulder. I don't know, sweetheart, but we have to try. This could be the only chance we ever get. Sarah frowned, her brow furrowing as she thought for a moment. But why would they trust us? I mean, look at us. We're not even good at agreeing on what we should have for dinner, let alone save the world. Jake smiled softly. That's true. But maybe it's because we're imperfect that they think we have a chance. We're still learning. We've always been learning. It's why we created all those stories, those costumes, those imaginations of other worlds. They see that we're capable of more than just fighting each other. We're capable of coming together. Sarah brightened, a small glimmer of hope in her eyes. So, we just need to imagine it? Imagine a world where everyone gets along? Jake chuckled, pulling her into a hug. Something like that. If we can imagine it, we might just find a way to make it happen. The days leading up to the trial were tense. News outlets broadcasted updates, and the public held their breath as world leaders scrambled to make a decision. For the first time in history, there was a growing sense of global solidarity, even if it was still fragile. The threat of failure, of being left behind in a cosmos filled with advanced civilizations, was enough to unite even the most divided corners of the Earth. Then, on the 6th day, the Zilithans made their move. Zyrtec appeared on every screen, every channel, every form of communication. The message was clear: the trial would begin the following day. "This is your final test," Zyrtec's voice echoed. "We will present you with a global crisis. Your response will determine whether you are ready to join the Interdimensional Federation. You will have 48 hours to resolve the situation. If you succeed, humanity will be accepted into the fold. If you fail, you will remain isolated in your dimension. You will not be granted another chance." The screen flickered, and a new image appeared, a massive, spiraling storm system forming in the Pacific Ocean. It was unlike anything anyone had seen before, an unnatural phenomenon that seemed to be rapidly expanding, covering entire nations. "This storm," Zyrtec continued, "is unlike any natural disaster you have experienced. It threatens to consume entire continents. You must find a way to stop it before it reaches critical mass. This will test your ability to collaborate, to pool your resources, and to innovate without the constraints of your borders. Failure to act together will result in the storm consuming your world." Jake's stomach twisted. The crisis was real, and it was a test that left no room for error. It wasn't a question of whether humanity could develop the technology to stop the storm, it was about whether they could come together as one species, one world. The challenge had been set. The clock was ticking. Humanity had only one chance to prove its worth. The next 48 hours became a whirlwind of action, negotiation, and, for the first time in history, true global collaboration. Governments set aside their differences, nations worked together, and humanity began to solve problems as a unified force. Scientists, engineers, and climate experts shared data in real time, pooling their knowledge and resources. The divisions of politics and power gave way to a single common goal. Jake stood in the middle of the action, watching it unfold with a mixture of awe and disbelief. What was happening wasn't just about technology or science, it was a transformation of the human spirit. For the first time, humanity wasn't just cooperating, it was united. And then, just as the storm reached its apex, a breakthrough came. A combined team of international scientists, using a mixture of satellite technology, atmospheric manipulation systems, and quantum computing, found a way to stabilize the storm's trajectory. Using the collaborative efforts of every nation, the storm was diverted, its force mitigated, and the world was saved. The crisis had been averted, and for the first time, humanity had proven that it could transcend its divisions. When the dust settled, Zyrtec's face appeared on every screen once more. "You have succeeded, Earthlings. You have passed the test. Your world has shown the ability to work together, to innovate, and to overcome adversity. You are now ready to join the Interdimensional Federation." First Contact, the Alien Cosplayer Experience, Part 5. The world had passed the test. Zyrtec's message was clear: humanity had proven its worth to join the Interdimensional Federation. In the wake of the global crisis that had been averted by unprecedented cooperation, Earth had changed, its people had changed. Nations that had once been mired in conflict now stood together in the realization that their survival didn't just depend on diplomacy or military power, it depended on unity, on shared purpose. Jake Miller stood in a quiet room at the United Nations headquarters in New York. Representatives from all over the world had gathered for the first time, not to argue, but to celebrate their victory. The trial had been difficult, but it had brought humanity closer than anyone could have imagined. There was still much to be done. Of course, old grudges and challenges would not disappear overnight, but something had fundamentally shifted. The future, once uncertain, now glimmered with possibility. Dr. Joe, the astrobiologist who had been working alongside Jake throughout the crisis, walked over to him, a look of deep contemplation on her face. "Jake, have you thought about what happens next?" He sighed, glancing out the window. The city skyline stretched out before him, a testament to human ingenuity and resilience. "Yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot. The Zilithans said we've passed the test, but that doesn't mean we're done. We've only just started." The door to the room opened, and in walked Zyrtec, their towering figure still as imposing as ever. But there was a certain softness to their presence now, a subtle change in their posture. Maybe it was the weight of the moment, Or maybe it was the recognition that they had witnessed something extraordinary, a species on the brink of a new era. Zyrtec spoke in their smooth, mechanical voice. You have shown the potential to join the greater community of the multiverse. But this is not the end. It is merely the beginning. There are many worlds beyond your own, and we will guide you. But your journey will require more than just unity. You will need to evolve. You will need to understand not just the universe around you, but your own place in it. Jake nodded, feeling a weight settle in his chest. What do you mean by evolve? How can we prepare for what's coming? Zyrtec stepped forward, their glowing eyes meeting his. Your species has immense potential, but you are bound by the limitations of your current understanding. You must expand your knowledge, your reach, your very perceptions of what is possible. We will provide the tools, the guidance, but it is up to you to rise to the challenge. The alien ambassador paused, and for the first time, Jake sensed a flicker of something like empathy, or perhaps it was simply the alien's way of recognizing the enormity of the task ahead. We will introduce you to other civilizations, Zyrtec continued, but before you can join us in full, you must prove that you can integrate and adapt, not just in technology, but in philosophy, in spirit. You must learn to think beyond your boundaries, to transcend the limitations of your own dimensions. Only then will you be truly ready. A shiver ran down Jake's spine. What Zyrtec was describing wasn't just the next step in human exploration, it was the beginning of a transformation. A transformation of thought, culture, and perhaps even of the human psyche itself. We will begin with knowledge, Zyrtec said, a gift from our people, as a first step. But be warned, the knowledge you will receive will challenge everything you know. It will require you to think differently, to question your assumptions about your place in the cosmos. Dr. Joe spoke up, her voice cautious but filled with curiosity. What kind of knowledge? What will we be taught? Zyrtec turned toward her. You will be shown the secrets of energy manipulation, the keys to interdimensional travel, and the true nature of your universe. But most importantly, you will learn how to coexist with other intelligent lifeforms across the multiverse. It is a lesson in balance, in harmony, and in understanding. Jake felt a strange mix of excitement and fear. It was as though the universe was about to open up in ways no human had ever imagined. But with that expansion of understanding came the undeniable reality. Humanity was about to be thrust into a cosmos that was far bigger and far more complex than they had ever dreamed. I know it sounds overwhelming, Zyrtec continued, but humanity's creativity, your resilience in the face of challenges, has already shown us that you are capable of far more than you realize. And now, you will be given the tools to understand not just your own world, but the very fabric of existence itself. Jake looked over at Dr. Joe, who was staring at Zyrtec with a mixture of awe and trepidation. We're not just learning new technology, Jake murmured. We're learning to see the universe differently. Zyrtec nodded. Precisely. The knowledge you will receive will reshape your perception of reality. You will come to understand that what you once thought was impossible is merely a matter of perspective. As the meeting came to a close, the representatives from around the world stood and shook hands, a moment of unity that had never seemed so powerful. Zyrtec's presence was a reminder that humanity had stepped into a new era, an era where the stars were no longer unreachable, and the boundaries of reality were no longer fixed. In the days that followed, the world began to see the first steps of its transformation. New technologies were shared, not just in the realm of physics and engineering, but in ways that would touch every aspect of life. Energy sources that had once seemed like science fiction began to take shape. Humans learned to manipulate quantum fields, to bend energy in ways they had only dreamed of. Earth's first true space program, backed by the resources and knowledge of the Zilithan Empire, took its first steps toward the stars. But the most profound change was philosophical. Humanity began to see itself not as an isolated species on a small blue planet, but as part of a vast, interconnected web of life. The stories that once filled Comic-Con halls, of brave adventurers exploring distant worlds, now seemed like prophecies, a reflection of humanity's inherent drive to reach beyond the stars. For Jake, the realization came slowly but surely. He sat with Sarah one evening, as the world's skyline twinkled beneath them. The knowledge they had gained from the Zilithans was profound. But it wasn't just about technology. It was about understanding that humanity wasn't alone, and that the universe was full of possibilities that were just waiting to be discovered. Dad? Sarah asked, her voice full of wonder. Do you think we'll ever meet other people, real people, like Zyrtak? Jake smiled, looking out at the horizon. I think we've already started meeting them, kiddo. And the best part? We're going to be part of something much bigger than we ever imagined. As humanity began its journey into the stars, one thing was certain: the adventure was only just beginning. First Contact, the Alien Cosplayer Experience, Part 6. The days after the global unity that followed the trial were nothing short of revolutionary. People began to look at their world differently, not as a collection of divided nations, but as a single entity connected by the same goal, reaching the stars. The Zilithans had given humanity a glimpse of what was possible. But now the hard work began, transforming the world into a true interdimensional player. But Jake Miller, still reeling from the enormity of it all, knew that even with the knowledge, technology, and inspiration the Zilithans had provided, there were still challenges ahead. As humanity took its first steps into the vast unknown, the first tangible manifestation of this new era appeared in the form of a colossal, shimmering portal. It appeared without warning, just outside of Earth's atmosphere, large enough to be seen even from the surface. The portal, a swirling mass of energy, was the gateway to other dimensions. For the first time, human beings could travel beyond their own reality, into worlds that had once only existed in the pages of science fiction. The first group of human explorers, chosen from various fields of expertise, science, philosophy, engineering, was selected to venture through the portal. Jake, now working as a liaison between Earth's leaders and the Zilithans, had an important role to play in this monumental event. He wasn't going through the portal himself. His task was to help guide humanity's first steps into the interdimensional community, working with the Zilithans to ensure that humanity would integrate safely and intelligently into the greater cosmic order. But not everyone was on board with the idea of leaving Earth behind. Although the excitement of the scientific and technological breakthroughs was undeniable, there were voices of dissent. Political leaders, religious groups, and even some scientists expressed concerns about humanity's readiness to enter a multiversal federation. Many feared that such a leap might result in disastrous consequences for Earth, or worse, the exploitation of humanity by more advanced civilizations. Jake found himself at the center of this debate. He was constantly bombarded by questions and doubts, many from people who wanted to protect Earth's autonomy. Do we really understand the implications of what we're about to do? A representative from the European Union asked in a tense meeting, his voice sharp. What guarantees do we have that the Zilithans aren't simply using us for their own purposes? Jake's response, though grounded in the optimism of human progress, also carried the weight of his knowledge of the unknown. The Zilithans gave us a choice, he explained. They didn't force us to take this leap, and we've shown that we're capable of more than just survival. We can be part of something much greater than ourselves, something that we've only begun to understand. But it's up to us to decide how we approach this new chapter. If we fear the unknown, we'll never grow. If we embrace it, we might just become something far beyond what we ever thought possible. The room fell into silence, the tension palpable. After a long pause, the representative spoke again, his tone softer now. Perhaps you're right, Jake, but this isn't just about science or progress, it's about the soul of humanity. Are we ready to step beyond the confines of our own world and meet others who may be vastly different from us? The question hung in the air, but before Jake could respond, Zyrtak's holographic image flickered into the room. Their voice, though still authoritative, carried a tone of understanding. It is a question humanity must answer for itself. The choice is yours. The door is open, but it will remain only as long as you are ready to walk through it. Your path forward is one you must decide together. The council session ended with more questions than answers, and Jake couldn't shake the feeling that humanity was standing at the edge of something immense, something that could change the very fabric of existence. But there was no turning back now. The first explorers were preparing to step through the portal. 2 days later, the moment arrived. The chosen crew of the first human expedition was gathered at the launch site, the massive portal behind them pulsing with iridescent light. The crowd, scientists, world leaders, journalists, and citizens, watched in breathless anticipation. Jake, standing at the front, had a heavy heart, filled with both awe and concern. This was humanity's first true step into the cosmos. It was a historic moment. The crew, led by Commander Ellen Dawson, was made up of individuals from all walks of life. There was Dr. Marcus Chen, a quantum physicist who had helped decode some of the Zilithan's advanced technology, and Lieutenant Nadia Reyes, an engineer who had helped design the interdimensional vessel that would carry the crew through the portal. Together, they represented the best of humanity's ability to adapt and innovate. But as they stood on the precipice of this new frontier, Jake couldn't help but wonder, what would they find on the other side? "Ready?" Ellen Dawson asked, her voice calm but resolute. Jake nodded, trying to steady his own nerves. "Ready as we'll ever be." With a final glance at Earth, the crew climbed aboard their vessel. The engines hummed to life, and the ship's hull shimmered as it began its journey toward the portal. As they passed through the glowing threshold, there was a brief moment of disorientation, a sense of weightlessness, and then, they were gone. Jake stood there, watching the portal ripple and shimmer with a sense of awe. The world had changed in that one fleeting moment. Humanity was no longer confined to its own corner of the universe. The multiverse awaited. On the other side of the portal, the explorers found themselves in a place that defied all understanding. The laws of physics seemed to bend and twist in ways they could hardly comprehend. The sky was a swirling kaleidoscope of colors that no human had ever seen. Strange, crystalline structures floated in the air, and alien landscapes stretched out in every direction. The crew took tentative steps into this new reality, their sensors scanning the environment for any signs of life or danger. But as they ventured deeper into this new dimension, they began to encounter other beings who, though far different from humanity, shared an unmistakable sense of curiosity and intelligence. "We're not alone," Dr. Chen said, his voice filled with wonder. This is incredible. These aren't just random worlds. They're alive. They're part of something much bigger than we ever imagined." Lieutenant Reyes, her eyes wide with disbelief, added, "It's like we've stepped into a living organism. The entire dimension is interconnected." As they continued to explore, the crew encountered other civilizations, some familiar, some bizarre, but all undeniably advanced. The Zilithans had told them that this was just the beginning, that they would soon be introduced to the wider multiverse. But the explorers knew, deep down, that they had only scratched the surface of what awaited them. Back on Earth, Jake watched as the first communication from the explorers was broadcast to the world. Their message was simple but profound: "We've made contact, and the universe is far more wondrous than we could have ever dreamed." Humanity had taken its first steps into the cosmos, and it wasn't just a journey of technology or knowledge, it was a journey of the soul. The universe was vast, yes, but now, for the first time, humanity had a place in it, and the multiverse had just gained a new, eager participant. Jake couldn't help but smile as he watched the broadcast. The journey was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun.